Coming in at a number 10 spot, we have the mutated pig. Spider pig, anyone? No? No? Okay. What you are seeing is a mutated piglet that was born near the site of the original explosion. This piglet suffered from dipigus, which is a congenital deformity where the body axis forks left and right partway along the torso, with the posterior end, which is the pelvis and legs, duplicated. And if you double back on this photo, it kind of looks straight out of a scene from a horror movie. Kinda like The Thing. At a number 9 spot, we have radioactive spiders. Spiders have been the subject of many people's fears for many years, but recent developments in Chernobyl have added a whole new layer of terror to their existence. These spiders are living in the exclusion zone, which is the area surrounding the site of the infamous nuclear disaster. The spiders that inhabit this area are not only radioactives themselves, but also began to spin webs that are radioactive too. This development is straight out of a comic book. The radioactive spiders and their webs are dangerous to other animals that are not radioactive. This means that non-radioactive animals that come into contact with them could suffer from radiation poisoning. Even humans who venture into the exclusion zone need to be careful, as they could easily walk into these webs and be exposed to dangerous levels of radiation. These spiders have also developed new ways of weaving their webs, which suggests that they have undergone some sort of genetic mutation due to the radiation. This mutation could have significant implications for the ecosystem of this exclusion zone and also beyond. And it's just crazy to think that just by walking through a cobweb, it could make you suffer from radiation poisoning. Crazy. At a number 8 spot, we have the black bird of Chernobyl. In the days leading up to the Chernobyl disaster, several workers in the control room of the nuclear power plant claimed to have seen a terrifying creature in the sky. The creature was described as a hideous humanoid with giant wings, a black headless body, and red glowing eyes. It was said to be a bringer of doom, sending a message of imminent disaster to all who gaze upon it. Ever since, it's been known as the black bird of Chernobyl. Sydney archaeologist Robert Maxwell claims that the legend of the Blackbird is more than just a spooky story. Maxwell is the only archaeologist to have ever worked at Chernobyl, completing 2 field excursions at the exclusion zone both in 2010 and 2012. He is very passionate about the place in both a historical and archaeological sense, and there's little he doesn't know about Chernobyl on matters of both physical and supernatural. Maxwell told news.com.au that the legend of the Blackbird of Chernobyl was something he had heard about when he was in the exclusion zone. He said that the legend states that in the days leading up to the disaster, a supernatural creature was sighted in the sky over Chernobyl by many of the men in the control room. They also claimed to have seen this terrifying creature just before the explosion. This is what made many believe this mutated bird or man was a messenger of danger. So basically, if you see it, something bad is bound to happen. Kinda like the Mothman. At a number 7 spot, we have the cows. Around the area of Chernobyl, agriculture was once a primary source of income before the disaster. And after the disaster, these animals were exposed to high levels of radiation. More specifically, the cows. Many farmers took their cows with them when they evacuated the area, but the radiation had already affected them. The newer generation saw much more of the effects of radiation. In 1989, farmers began reporting birth defects in their animals, and as time went on, the cows became less mutated. However, the effects did not go away completely. Cows began to graze on contaminated feed, leading to more internal effects. Even completely normal looking cows near the exclusion zone started producing milk that was both toxic and unfit for consumption. This is just one of the clear examples of how, even though the visible effects of radiation exposure may have worn off, there are still lasting effects that we had not previously considered. And to make matters worse, this didn't only affect the surrounding area. The Mexican government stated in January 1988 that they destroyed 41 tons of imported powdered milk because it was reportedly contaminated with radiation from the nuclear disaster. More specifically, the milk is contaminated with cesium-137 and strontium-90, which cause a syndrome that destroys cell membranes. And all I can say is, I'll be taking a small hiatus off milk for a bit. At a number 6 spot, we have chickens. Scientists have reported the presence of mutated chickens with deformed beaks and an extra set of legs in areas surrounding the nuclear power plant. These chickens almost look unreal and doesn't resemble their species at all. Experts believe that the mutations in chickens are a result of radiation exposure, with the birds being particularly susceptible to genetic damage due to their fast reproductive cycle. It is advised as well that humans should avoid consuming these chickens as they may cause health issues. I thought that was a given. Although these deformities may seem alarming, it's important to note that not all mutations are harmful, and some may even be advantageous in certain environments. In the hump rare list, we have wild boars. 30 years after the nuclear disaster, radiation is still causing so many concerns in unexpected places. One such place is the mountains of Czech Republic, where wild boars are becoming eradicated from eating wild mushrooms during the winter months. The radioactive metal cesium-137 was spewed in the atmosphere during the 1986 disaster and was blown almost 1,000 miles away to the Czech Republic. Mushrooms in the region absorb this radiation, and when wild boars consume them, the radiation travels up the food chain. The contaminated boars are not safe for human consumption, which is a problem in a country where boar meat is commonly used in stews and goulash. Cesium-137 is not safe for human consumption as it spreads radioactive atoms throughout the body, increasing the risk of cancer. While a low dose of cesium-137 is unlikely to cause harm, consuming it multiple times a week for several months may lead to some health issues. Food inspectors in the Czech Republic screen wild meat before it goes to the market, and from 2014 to 2016, almost half of the 614 pigs inspected were too radioactive to eat. But if you visit the Czech Republic now and consume wild boar, you should be safe, as hazardous meat is banned from use. It is essential to note that the contamination is not turning the boars into mutant animals, but it is a warning sign that radiation from the Chernobyl disaster continues to have consequences more than 3 decades later. At our number 4 spot, we have firebugs. In 2011, 2 friends stumbled upon a group of tiny but deadly creatures while out collecting flowers in the exclusion zone. These creatures, known as firebugs, are radioactive and were discovered by the friends for scientific reasons, which is to study the pollen, not to create a deadly radioactive bouquet of flowers. The friends collected hundreds of these bugs, some from areas with higher levels of radiation and some from areas with lower levels of radiation. Through their research, they found that the bugs exposed to higher levels of radiation had deformities, confirming suspicions about the negative effects of radiation on living creatures. Although these creatures may seem harmless at first, their radioactive properties make them a danger to humans. You wouldn't want these guys crawling on your skin for a number of reasons. And with their small size and deadly nature, it's really easy to see why these firebugs are a cause for concern in the Chernobyl area. And it just shows that you can't even collect flowers in this place, so best believe avoid it completely. Number 3, the barn shallot. In the aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster, not only were humans affected, but the entire ecosystem was thrown into chaos. Animals who lived in the exclusion zone, including those who spend most of their time in the sky, were exposed to the effects of radiation. Among those affected animals are the barn swallows, whose physical appearance has been altered by the disaster. The barn swallows of Chernobyl have suffered from severe deformities that have persisted throughout the years since the nuclear meltdown. These birds have been affected more than their land animal counterparts, and it's still unclear why. It is also uncertain if these changes will reverse back to their previous state. Currently, the swallows have severely deformed beaks, disproportionate feathers, partial albinism, and smaller brains. While some of these issues are more severe than others, they undoubtedly have a significant impact on the swallow's way of life. Despite these obstacles, the barn swallows continue to adapt as time goes by. Number 2, the Przewalski's horse. The Przewalski's horse is a wild horse originating from Mongolia and was once on the brinks of extinction due to hunting and difficulties in reproduction in captivity. Harsh winters in their natural habitat didn't make things easier for the species as well. But in the late 1990s, hope was restored for the Przewalski's horse when a group of 30 horses were released into the Ukrainian side of the exclusion zone. Amazingly, some of the original horses are still alive to this day, and camera trap images have shown young horses as well. This is a huge win for the species, as their expanding population in such a harsh environment means that they might potentially be able to return from the brink and continue as a species. Some Przewalski horses have significant deformities, but this doesn't change the fact that they're an excellent example of how successful conservation efforts can help repopulate endangered species. Number 1, the European grey wolves. In the aftermath of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, the exclusion zone surrounding the site of the accident was evacuated by humans, leaving the wildlife to thrive in radioactive environments. While some species have struggled to adapt to the aftermath of the disaster, others, such as the European grey wolf, have been thriving in this unusual environment. Despite the high levels of radiation, the grey wolf population has been able to grow, with the population of the area being 7 times higher than in comparable sites. Researchers are also still trying to figure out why this is happening, but it is clear that radiation is not affecting the wildlife's ability to reproduce, but it is causing deformities in some. As their population grows, they're beginning to travel farther and spread out, which is creating a new set of challenges, and coming into contact with radioactive wolves could result in a high dose of radiation, which is not recommended. Touching a carcass of these wolves is also really bad because if you do touch them with your bare hands, you'll probably get radiation poisoning. Coming in at our number 10 spot, we have the Goddess of Death statue. The ancient limestone statue known as the Woman from Lem, or more infamously known as the Goddess of Death, has been the subject of much speculation and superstition since its discovery in Cyprus in 1878. Dating back all the way to 3500 BC, the true purpose of the statue is shrouded in complete mystery, but it is believed to have been used as either a fertility symbol or a representation of a long-forgotten goddess. Despite its small and unassuming appearance, the statue has been linked to a series of tragic events that have befallen each of its owners throughout the years. The first recorded owner of the statue was Lord Alphonse, who lost all 7 of his family members within 6 years of acquiring this piece. The curse continued with Ivor Medici, the statue's second owner, whose entire family died within 4 years of obtaining it. Lord Thompson Noel suffered a very similar fate, losing his entire family within 4 years of possessing the statue. The final owner, Sir Alan Beaverbrook, and his family also met an untimely death after acquiring the statue. In an effort to break the curse, Beaverbrook's 2 surviving sons decided to donate the statue to the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh. However, even the museum curator who handled the statue met an untimely end within a year of its acquisition. Today, the statue remains safely well behind a glass at the museum. At our number 9 spot, we have the Dark Mirror. The Dark Mirror is a very creepy mirror that has gained notoriety due to its disturbing vision it allegedly brings to those who gaze into it. It was obtained by the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult from a woman whose mother had purchased it at a psychic expo. The mirror appears to use the energy of the gazer and show them their deepest fears and nightmares, including visions of their own corpse. The mirror is best used in psychomantium, which is a setup in an enclosed area with only darkness used to communicate with spirits. Visitors to the museum have reported seeing themselves age, wink, smile, and even disappear during these sessions. The dark mirror has caused headaches, feelings of dread, and an intense electrical energy in some people as well. The previous owner of the mirror became withdrawn after trying to perfect her divination skills using the mirror and eventually kept it in a closet, saying that it was evil. Despite the negative experiences associated with the mirror, some people have been brave enough to try it for themselves, with some reporting only seeing their reflection while others see something else completely. The mirror still remains a mystery and its true powers and purpose remain unknown. At the number 8 spot, we have the Bassano vase. This vase is a pretty little thing and pretty old too. Cast from silver in the 15th century and produced in a very simple design, it is one of the most mysterious and elusive haunted objects in the world. Originally, the vase was a wedding present for an Italian bride who lived in a small village in Napoli. On the woman's wedding night, she was found slowly passing away on the floor. Her hands were wrapped tightly around the silver vase, and in her dying breaths, the bride vowed to have her revenge and then passed away. Ever since, every owner of the vase has passed away tragically and in very mysterious ways. It was hidden away until it got auctioned, and upon looking inside of the vase, there was a note inside saying, quote, "Beware, this vase brings death." It was then sold 3 different times in different auctions, but every single owner would pass away. Eventually, it was buried and now no one knows where it's located, and that's probably for the better. Others believe it was taken in by a museum, but after a number of mysterious deaths from staff members, they decided to hide it from the public's eyes. Coming in at our number 7 spot, we have the Baker's wedding dress. This dress belonged to Anna Baker, who was a part of a wealthy family located in Altoona, Pennsylvania. They would reside in what is known as the Baker Mansion in 1849, the same year Anna fell in love with a man and planned to get married. But her father Elias was like, no, that's not happening. It's believed he said no because he was a part of a different social class. He didn't want the marriage to happen so bad, he even got the man banished from the town. Anna was heartbroken as a result and just begged her dad, but her dad just kept telling her no. She then went on her way to buy her own dress, which is the one in this picture, and showed her father, and he was still very adamant on his decision. So in spite of her father, she never married even after death. Fast forward to 1922, all the members of the Baker family passed away, and the mansion had been bought by the Blair County Historical Society and then turned into a museum. In the museum, guests report seeing the glass of the dress being shaken violently, and others report seeing a woman apparition in a black dress staring into this display, and perhaps it's Anna from the grave. but I guess we'll never know. At number 6 spot, we have the Dybbuk box. In June last year, Post Malone visited the Haunted Museum in downtown Las Vegas with Zach Bagans, host of the TV show Ghost Adventures. Bagans took Malone into the most notorious room in the museum, which held the Dybbuk box, widely considered the world's most haunted object. The cabinet is haunted by a Dybbuk, which is a malicious spirit, and was first put up on sale on eBay in 2012. According to the seller's description, it was purchased from a Holocaust survivor's granddaughter who brought it in Spain after escaping the occupied Poland at the time. Manis, the buyer, found a series of strange items inside, including 2 pennies, locks of hair, a small statue engraved with the Hebrew word shalom, a golden wine goblet, a dried rosebud, and a single candle holder with octopus-shaped legs. The box passed through a few hands before the last owner consulted with rabbis on how to seal it for good. Then Post Malone was with Bagans when he decided to touch the box for the very first time, and Malone grabbed Bagans' shoulder while he was doing so. The curse was apparently transferred to Post Malone, and he experienced a series of unfortunate events. His private plane was forced to make an emergency landing after its tires blew out. 3 armed robbers targeted a home in San Fernando Valley that they believed to be his, and his Rolls Royce was involved in a serious car accident. The Dybbuk box has a long history of strange occurrences surrounding it, with previous owners experiencing horrific nightmares, strokes, and physical ailments. In the hump of our list, we have the Ring of Silvanus. This is a cursed ring that was first owned by a Roman man named Silvanus. This was a rather large ring with a diameter of 1 inch, so it was believed she wore this on her thumb or even over her glove. But one day, his ring was stolen from him. He believed it was taken from a man named Sinicanus, and Silvanus then proceeded to place a curse on the guy by heading up to a temple and creating a lead plate naming it the Cursed Tablet. On this tablet, he wrote, quote, "For the god Nodin, Silvanus has lost a ring and donated 1/2 of its worth to the Nodins. Among those named Sinicanus, permit no good health until it is returned to the temple of the Nodins." It is believed whoever owns the ring will fall ill, get into accidents, or have things happen to them which will lead them to everlasting suffering. And fun fact, this is the same ring that inspired Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, so it kind of makes sense. In 1785, it was found on a random farm, but now it is placed in good hands in a museum that is not known, which is probably for the better since no one will be ever to place this curse on their finger ever again. At a number 4 spot, we have the Busby Stoop Chair. In 1702, Thomas Busby was convicted of murdering his own stepfather. Story goes that on his way to his execution, he requested one final thing. This request would be simply to have one last drink in his favorite pub. Nothing harmful, right? So the judge decided to let him do it. After permission was granted, he decided to have a beer in his favorite chair at the bar. Here is where it gets kind of worse. After finishing his drink, he said aloud, quote, "May sudden death come to anyone who dares sit in my chair." He was then escorted to his execution, and his body would be displayed right outside of the inn for all to see. Over the years, death struck many who sat in the chair, leading the landlord to donate it to the Thirst Museum in England. Locals claim that during the Second World War, Canadian airmen from the nearby base at Skipton-on-Swale went to the pub, and those who sat in this chair never returned home from their bombing missions over mainland Europe. To avoid anyone sitting on it, they suspended it 5 feet in the air to stop any future tragedy. Regardless, this chair looks super uncomfortable, so I wouldn't even know if I want to sit on it, cursed or not. At a number 3 spot, we have the Okiku doll. Let me start this off by saying that this haunted doll is worse than Chucky. The story starts in 1918 Japan. Older brother Aikichi Suzuki bought a doll for his 2-year-old daughter Okiku. The doll had a black bob cut and a traditional kimono. His sister loved the doll so much that she even named it after her own name. These two would become so attached like no other. But in the following year, Okiku became gravely ill and ended up passing away. To commemorate her, her family put her favorite doll on her memorial shrine. Everything seemed fine until after a few days they would begin to notice something very strange. The doll's hair seemed to be actively growing, and every time it was cut, it would just keep on growing until it just reached just above her knees, which actually happened to be the place where the human Okiku's hair stopped. Eventually her family would move away, but choose to keep the doll in the same place, thinking that Okiku would have wanted that. Now it resides in the Monenji Temple, where it's said that monks will cut the hair regularly as it keeps on growing. At number 2 spot, we have Annabelle. I know you heard this one, but it's too good of a cursed object to leave out of this list. For all who don't know, the doll's name Annabelle comes from the alleged spirit who possesses it. In the early 1970s, a young college student named Donna gave the doll to Ed and Lorraine Warren, a now famous pair of paranormal investigators. Originally, Donna received the doll as a gift from her mother, who purchased it in an antique shop. Over time, Donna and her roommate noticed that the doll had a tendency to move, be it from locations throughout the apartment or positions upright, legs crossed, etc. After more paranormal activity, the girls contacted the Warrens, who decided the doll contained a demon straight from hell. When an exorcism failed to do the trick, the Warrens agreed to move the doll to a secure location inside of a glass box at their museum in Connecticut. Unfortunately, their museum has been since closed down and only a small select few can still visit. So best believe this museum is locking away all these evil objects contained in the building now, and probably for very good reason. Coming in at our number 1 spot, we have the Terracotta Army. This is a one-of-a-kind 2200-year-old funerary art. The Terracotta Army is considered the most priceless archaeological discovery of modern times. However, for those 7 farmers who discovered it back in 1974, the warriors have been proved more of a curse than a blessing. Soon after the discovery, their farmlands were claimed by the government and their homes were demolished to make way for exhibition halls and various gift shops. Upon the 7, one took their own life while the other ones passed away tragically, since they couldn't afford healthcare. Some have blamed the government for their passing, while others believe this is a similar curse to Tut's tomb. But what do you guys think? Leave a comment down below.
Number 10, the Ariel Castro kidnappings. Between 2002 and 2004, Ariel Castro kidnapped Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Georgia Gina DeJesus from the streets of Cleveland. Upon being kidnapped, Castro took Michelle Knight to the upper floor of his house, tied her hands and feet together, and pulled her up using her hands, feet, and neck. He left her there for 3 days without food. Prosecutors at Castro's sentencing wrote that diaries kept by his victims speak of forced intimate conduct, of being locked in a dark room, of anticipating the next session of abuse, of the dreams of someday escaping and being reunited with family, of being chained to a wall, of being held like a prisoner of war, of missing the lives they once enjoyed, of emotional abuse, of his threats to end, of being treated like an animal, of continuous abuse, and of desiring freedom. The women were kept in locked bedrooms, where they were forced to use plastic toilets that were emptied infrequently. They were fed 1 meal a day and allowed to shower twice a week at most. According to a statement from the CDP, officers visited Castro's home only once following the kidnappings to discuss an unrelated incident. Castro did not appear to be home at the time and was interviewed later somewhere else. Neighbors claim to have called the police about suspicious activity observed at the home, but police have said they have no record of any such calls. Castro's son Anthony reported that there were certain areas of the house that were locked and inaccessible. He also mentioned an occasion 3 weeks before the women's escape when Castro asked him if Berry would ever be found. Anthony said that he told Castro that Berry had likely passed away, to which Castro responded, "Really? You think so?" Number 9, the Nobuyuki Sato kidnapping. Fusako Sano disappeared on November 13, 1990, after watching a school baseball game in her hometown of Sanjo, Niigata Prefecture, Japan. Police even consider the possibility that she had been kidnapped by North Korean intelligence operatives. She'd been kidnapped by Nobuyuki Sato, then a 28-year-old mentally disturbed, unemployed Japanese man who forced her into his car and subsequently held her in the upstairs floor of his apartment in a residential area of Kashiwazaki, Niigata Prefecture, for 9 years and 2 months. The house is only 200 meters from a koban, police substation, and 55 kilometers from the location where she was kidnapped. While Sano was initially scared, according to her own statements, she eventually just gave up and accepted her fate. Allegedly, Sato kept her tied up for several months and used a stun gun for punishments if she did not videotape horse races on television. Sano was also threatened with a knife and beatings. Her kidnapper shared his men's clothes with her and gave her food 3 times per day, either instant food or meals cooked by his mother, who lived downstairs in the house. He also cut Sano's hair, since there was no bath or toilet upstairs where Sano was confined. She was only able to take a bath infrequently when permitted by her captor. She spent most of her time in captivity listening to the radio and reportedly was allowed to watch TV only in the last year of her ordeal. While the door was never locked, Sano did not take a step outside for 9 years. She later told the police, "I was too scared to escape and eventually lost the energy to escape." Sato's mother lived downstairs and apparently had no contact with her son's captive since he became very violent whenever she tried to go upstairs. However, police believe the mother must have had some knowledge of Sano's presence. For example, it was alleged that she purchased feminine hygiene products for the victim. Number 8, 24 years underground. In the rural town of Amstetten, Austria, 18-year-old Elisabeth Fritzl was reported missing by her father Joseph Fritzl in 1984. But she wasn't missing. Her father, who had been sharing her since she was 11 years old, had lured her into the cellar and locked her in. He forced her to write a runaway letter which he showed to her mother and police to convince everyone she was gone. Since she was 18 and the letter said not to look for her and that she had joined a cult, there wasn't really much police could do. Fritzl kept his daughter in a windowless, completely soundproof prison beneath the home that was only accessible from a small door hidden in a cabinet. To make matters worse, his wife, Elizabeth's mother, was clueless about all of it. Doctors sent out a public plea asking for Elizabeth, still believed to be off wandering and maybe in a cult, to come forward so that she could take her daughter's medical history. Fritzl brought his daughter to the hospital, claiming she had just showed up on his doorstep in response to the public plea. Number 7. Sylvia Likens. Gertrude Baniszewski was paid to care for sisters Sylvia and Jenny Likens while their parents were traveling as carnival workers. The Baniszewski family physically and verbally abused until the focus shifted solely to Sylvia. Sylvia was kept locked in the basement, eating only scraps. Everyone was told that she had been run off with some men. Baniszewski even forced Sylvia to write a letter to her parents confirming these lies. In October 1965, Sylvia Likens passed in the basement. Her official cause of demise was brain hemorrhaging. After finding her victim gone, Baniszewski concocted a story for the police claiming that Sylvia had been attacked by a group of young men. However, when the police came to investigate, Jenny took this opportunity to say, "Get me out of here, I'll tell you everything." Gertrude Baniszewski and her daughter were both sentenced to life in prison. Richard Hobbs, Coy Hubbard, and John Baniszewski Jr. were sentenced from 2 to 21 years in prison for the roles they played in the abuse. Number 6. Sean Hornbeck. Sean Hornbeck was kidnapped while riding his bike to a friend's house near Richwoods, Missouri. Sean had taken this path many times before, but this time Sean passed by Mike Devlin, who bumped him with his truck. Devlin initially seemed concerned for Sean's safety, but moments later put him into the back of the truck and told him, "You were just at the wrong place at the wrong time." Sean's parents, Pam Akers and stepfather Craig Akers, focused all of their time looking for their son. Both Sean's mother and stepfather spent all of their money and retirement savings looking for Sean and paying investigators to help aid the police. Sean would remain missing for 4 years. Devlin decided to kidnap Ben Ownby on January 8, 2007. This time, a neighbor saw Devlin's truck and knew something was wrong when she saw Ben crying and the truck peeling out from the bus stop. The neighbor was able to give the police a description of the white truck, and the FBI was able to link the truck to Devlin relatively quickly. When the FBI came to Devlin's house to question him about the kidnapping, Devlin seemed distant and nervous and kept referring to his godson named Sean that he had to return to. The FBI quickly realized that the Sean that Devlin was referring to was Sean Hornbeck. Devlin pled guilty to all counts and was sentenced to 72 life terms. Number 5. Colleen Stan. Colleen Stan was hitchhiking when 23-year-old Cameron Hooker and his 19-year-old wife Janice picked her up, drove her to a secluded wooded area, and pulled out a knife. Hooker forced Colleen to wear a blindfold and gag, and then he strapped a 20-pound wooden box around her head. The next time the car stopped, they were at the home where Colleen would remain a prisoner for the next 7 years. Cameron would place her in a small coffin-like box at bedtime and slide her underneath his bed. Colleen was brainwashed into believing Hooker was a part of some larger organization called The Company, and if she tried to escape, the company would get her. For most of her captivity, Colleen spent her time in that box under the bed. This was continued until Janice decided she wanted to get her husband help, so she helped Colleen escape. Cameron was found guilty and was sentenced to 104 years in prison. Number 4. Sabine Dardenne. Mark Dutroux and his wife Michelle Martin may have seemed like a normal couple to their neighbors, but little did anyone know, the couple was keeping a girl captive in their home, and Dutroux was a serial ender Belgian authorities had been looking for. Dutroux snatched Sabine when she was out on a bike ride and locked her up in the basement. She was abused repeatedly for the 80 days she spent chained up in his home. It was after he kidnapped Letitia Delhez that he was placed at the scene because his car was recognized. Police never got a confession out of Dutroux, but they had enough evidence to give him life in prison. His wife and accomplice Michelle Martin was sentenced to 30 years in prison. She only served 16 years before being released. Number 3. Natasha Kampusch. In 1998, Natasha Kampusch was dragged into a van and her whereabouts wouldn't be known for 8 years. Wolfgang Priklopil kidnapped Natasha. Natasha was forced to cater to all Priklopil's OCD-driven whims. If she did so much as leave a fingerprint behind, he would beat her. He didn't want her leaving straight hairs around, so he made her wear a plastic bag over her hair, and then he eventually shaved all her hair off. One day, and while he turned his back to take a call, she made a break for it. She ran as fast as she could to get someone to call the police. She was finally rescued. Prickly Peel ended his own life before he could be apprehended by jumping in front of a train. Number 2. J.C. Duggard. It would seem the people living near registered offender Philip Garrido weren't aware of his criminal history, and their mother was J.C. Duggard, when Garrido shocked her with a stun gun and kidnapped her in 1991. He locked her up in his home and then began abusing her, impregnating her twice. It was Garrido's wife Nancy who had actually chosen J.C. J.C. was locked in a tiny soundproof storage unit, then eventually moved to a bigger one where she remained handcuffed to the bed. J.C. wasn't served a warm meal until her first pregnancy. By the time J.C. was allowed out of the house, she was going by the name Alyssa and didn't want to admit to what had been happening to her. She was suffering from severe Stockholm Syndrome and tried to cover for Garrido. On August 26, 2009, when the Garridos went to a parole meeting, they broke Garrido and he confessed to everything. J.C. was able to return home and the Garridos were charged with 29 felony counts, including kidnapping, abuse, and false imprisonment. Nancy was sentenced to 34 years to life and Philip was sentenced to 431 years in prison. Thankfully, J.C. and her daughters were able to heal, move on, and create fulfilling lives. Number 1. 30 years of forced labor. A 73-year-old British man, Aravindan Balakrishnan, and his wife, 67-year-old Chanda Patni, kept 3 women as slaves in their home for 30 years. The 3 women, Aisha Wahab, Josephine Haraville, and Rosie Davies, were finally freed when police were given the address and showed up to the eerily normal looking home in a neighborhood just like any other on October 25th, 2013. It was the last place anyone expected to find 3 terrified and brainwashed women being held against their will for most of their lives. The women were all so badly emotionally and physically abused that they wouldn't even try escaping. Balakrishnan was the former leader of the Workers' Institute of Marxism-Leninism Mao Zedong thought. This was where he and 2 of the women met and where the brainwashing began. Rose, the youngest, allegedly fell out of a window in a commune with the people who became her daughter's captors. An organization called the Freedom Charity was responsible for tipping off the police to the situation. They had received a call on October 18th from a woman who said she'd been held against her will for over 30 years and that there were 2 other women trapped with her.
At our number 10 spot, we have the Crown's Casino morgue. There's been rumors circulating online about the existence of a morgue under or within the Crown's Casino in Melbourne, Australia. The rumors suggest that there is a secret corridor with walls that open up into the toilets, which are used to take away bodies of people who just have taken their life at the casino, which is supposedly a very high number, unfortunately. Some reports even suggest there are specific bathroom stalls designed for quick body disposal, but that's not confirmed. Although there is no concrete evidence to support these rumors, the stories keep on persisting and continue to intrigue everyone that come across this casino. Some websites even claim that the last stall in each bathroom is always occupied because it's connected to hallways to get people out who take their lives in the bathrooms. The reason for this high number is because many people believe that the Crown's Casino is a place of broken dreams and despair, where people are prone to suicidal thoughts as they gamble their life away. However, the actual number of people taking their lives at this casino is unclear, with reports ranging from 3 per year to as many as 30 or 40. Despite all these rumors as well, the casino denies the existence of a morgue on its premises. But some people believe that the Crown would want to keep any people taking their lives under wraps to avoid any tarnishing of its image, and that would kind of make sense. At a number 9 spot, we have the Princess Theatre. The Princess Theatre in Victoria, Melbourne, Australia is a historic landmark that has been in operation since 1857. Despite its beauty, the theatre is also known for its ghostly inhabitant, Frederick Baker. Baker was an actor who tragically died during a performance of Frost in 1888. According to reports, Baker was overwhelmed by the play and suffered a heart attack as he was lowered down through the stage via a trapdoor into the basement below the stage. Ever since then, Baker's ghosts have been reportedly seen in this theater, especially when a play is taking place. He has also been spotted in the dressing rooms wearing more than one outfit and staring at the stage as if he's about to perform himself. The Princess Theatre has a rich history that began in 1854 when it was built by Charles Copin, who owned 2 theaters in Melbourne. The Princess Theatre was proclaimed to be equal to the Paris Opera in France, and now today, the Princess Theatre is owned by David Mariner and was the first place in Australia where the play The Phantom of the Opera was shown. It became so successful that it is now the longest running play ever shown in Victoria. And despite its success and popularity, the theater's haunted history continues to draw visitors and ghost hunters alike. At number 8 spot, we have the Guyra incident. Guyra is a rural township in northern New South Wales, Australia, perched high on a volcanic uplift of the northern tablelands. It is known for being one of the highest places in Australia and one of the coldest. But on December 8th, 1999, a mysterious object fell from the sky and smashed into the local water dam, creating a crater and flattening an area of reeds in a semicircular pattern. Locals have been calling in actual sightings of a green light that had caused a loud boom about 30 seconds after being sighted. Space agencies, meteorological experts, and authorities have no record of a meteorite or space junk coming from down in the area at the time. Despite normal radiation levels, the water supply was cut while divers searched for this object. The incident hit the news in a major way, featuring prominently on all major TV networks, radio stations, and newspapers. It caused hysteria in the small town, with rumors circulating that a UFO had crashed at the dam. Theories ranged from a meteorite or space junk all the way to aliens. Police divers even discovered a subterranean cavern or tunnel which was suspected to have been caused by the object drilling down into the ground. However, the object could not be located and was speculated to have buried itself about 13 feet down into the soft granite of the earth. The official cause of the impact was now being seen as a meteorite, which was thought to be about the size of a grapefruit. However, there were no further efforts to retrieve it. Some people believe that officials were covering up the truth and that it was no meteorite but rather a UFO. Two researchers from Phenomena Research Australia went to investigate and found some odd details that did not fit into the meteorite theory. The object still remains a mystery to this day, and this incident is still talked about as one of the most bizarre events to occur in the small town. At our number 7 spot, we have the Westfall UFO. The Westfall UFO sighting was a mysterious event that took place on April 6, 1966 in Melbourne, Australia. A group of students and a teacher from Westfall High School reported seeing a large gray or silvery green saucer-shaped craft descending over flying the school and then suddenly disappearing behind a strand of trees. The object reappeared 20 minutes later and rapidly climbed before departing towards the northwest. Some witnesses reported seeing 5 unidentified aircraft pursuing the object. The odd thing is that the local TV station 6 claimed to have footage of the UFO, but when they went to bring it to authorities, it somehow vanished. And you know how that goes. The Australian newspaper The Age tried to explain the sighting as a weather balloon, but a subsequent check failed to find any commercial, private, or RAAF pilots who had reported anything unusual in the area at the time. Several explanations have been offered over the years, with one of the most plausible being that the object was a runaway balloon from the Hubble project, which was used to monitor radiation levels after British nuclear tests at Mar-a-Lago. At our number 6 spot, we have The Devil Among Us. In 1979, tragedy struck a family visiting Sydney's Luna Park. While waiting for a ferry at the Circular Quay, a man dressed in a satanic costume with horned headdress and all approached them and posed for a photo with their young son. And little did they know, this would be the last photo of that boy. Because later that night, a fire broke out in a riot at Luna Park, claiming the lives of this entire family. The police found the photo of the man in the satanic costume, but were unable to identify him. The mysterious incident left room for a legend to grow, and that the devil himself was walking among the people of Sydney, bringing death to whoever he touched. The identity of the man in the satanic costume and the true cause of the fire still remain a mystery to this day. And believe me, police searched desperately in order to ask him some questions. And ever since that incident, he has been renowned as literally the devil around Australia. In the hump of our list, we have the Hawkesbury River Monster. It appears that every place has its own river or lake monsters. Sightings of the Hawkesbury River Monster, also known as the Mooney Mooney Monster, were reported all the way back since the 1800s, although Aboriginal rock art in the region describing a similar creature dates back all the way to 3,000 years ago. Most accounts refer to the sea monster as grey with a large eel-like body, elongated head, 4 flippers, and a thick tail. Allegedly, the water serpent may have been floating around Australia's shores since the Jurassic era. While modern legend hunters have yet provided evidence of the existence of Australia's own Loch Ness Monster, research has found that the creature may have been a large crocodile, catfish, or eel. And if you wish to go looking for this river monster, it's said that you can hunt it in Hawkesbury, northwest of Sydney, just in case you guys want to die. At a number 4 spot, we have the Wakehurst Parkway. A stretch of road spanning from Narrabeen in Sydney's northern beaches, the Wakehurst Parkway Parkway is well known to locals as a hotspot for paranormal activity, with many vehicle-related passings occurring around the 14.6 kilometer stretch of road. Spooky stories range from seeing strange humanoids on this roadside to unsettling urban legend of the girl Kelly. According to the legend, Kelly appears as a younger girl who either stands in the middle of the road or appears in the backseat of your car. Apparently, if you don't demand she leaves the car, the driver will crash. The road has also been associated with gruesome crimes over the years, such as in 1994 when 34-year-old Stephen Dempson was shot in the heart with a crossbow at Deep Creek Reserve on the Wakehurst Parkway. His killer dumped his body in the creek but later returned to dismember it, taking it and putting it in a freezer. 1 year later, the body of 21-year-old Francis Tizone was found just meters from the Wakehurst Parkway in French's Forest, where her body has been dumped after being strangled by her ex-boyfriend. At a number 3 spot, we have the Beechworth Lunatic Asylum. Beechworth Asylum, also known as Mayday Lunatic Asylum, operated from 1867 to 1994 in Beechworth, Victoria, Australia. Over those 128 years, over 9,000 patients died within its walls, and people claim that some still remain in it. Many see faces floating in the windows, while others see the apparitions of the people who passed there. Many have spoken of the figure of a man who appears near the cellar and then completely vanishes within a second. Matron Sharp, who spent most of her life there, has been spotted on more than one occasion appearing as a grey hooded apparition in the corner of dark rooms. Then on top of that, doors swing by themselves, and at other times, mysterious screams can be heard echoing across this place. Now, the area is used for tourism and artistic purposes nowadays, but remember, this place claimed the lives of 9,000 people. There's bound to be at least one of them there if you decide to take a visit. At a number 2 spot, we have the Altways Panther. Supposedly, there's been alleged sightings of the elusive big cat scurrying its way through the Altways Ranges, where the bush meets the beach off Victoria's Great Ocean Road. Supposed sightings of black panthers in the bush have been documented since 1830s, ranging from rumors of big cats in the bush by New Eastern migrants to sworn testimonies and videos taken in more recent years. All have given the legendary creature a similar description: a large black four-legged creature very similar to a panther. Some explanations have been historical exotic animal trades or an evolutionary trail of feral cats in the area, while others have suggested that they may have come from traveling circuses or visiting soldiers years ago. Similar sightings have been reported in other states, including the Blue Mountains. It's said that you can encounter this beast in the Great Altways National Park, almost 3 hours southwest of Melbourne, past the RACV Torquay Resort near Apollo Bay, just in case, again, if you guys want to die. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have the Picton Tunnels. The most famous of the Picton Tunnels in New South Wales, called the Mushroom Tunnel, was the first railway tunnel used by the New South Wales Railways. During World War II, the tunnel has been used to store weapons and ammo. It was also said to be a hub of paranormal activity after a lot of people taking their own lives, murder, and accidental passings happened inside of this place. Many who have been brave enough to go into this tunnel have reported strange lights, cold spots, strange voices, and dark figures. There's also whispers that a mysterious lady in white still roams the tunnel, inducing fear into anyone who's unlucky enough to see her. Is it just me, or does every place have its own lady in white? Because this is not a surprise anymore.